Hello and welcome to another fun-filled episode of the joy of the Rediscovered album. As the smile on my face gets bigger and bigger as I go through 1995. So yeah, this week's album that starts it all off is this, Paranoid and Sunburnt by British rock band Skunk Anansie. This album came out on the 18th of September 1995 and I bought it when it came out, and that was because I heard this single, or this was the one I really locked into. Obviously I imagine I heard the first single on the radio, but it was I Can Dream that really, got me into the band. When I finally got around to buying the album sometime in September, again, as is the criteria for this series, I played it incessantly for weeks, possibly months, but mainly weeks on end, until I moved on to something else. But it's an interesting time for me in terms of music purchasing, but I'll explain why as we go along, because it makes more sense to do that as I walk through other albums. Now, the other thing I will say with all the albums I'm listening to, it's unlikely that I'm ever going to say, I listened back to the album and I hated it. I do make the point of not re-listening to the album until I'm due to record the episode, and then I spend several days listening to the album alongside a couple of other albums from that year that I either haven't listened to for a while or at all. So definitely check them out. It's as good as I remember it, and I've listened to it several times now. One was yesterday while I was doing some yard work with my strimmer and the mower. It was pretty good background music for that, actually. Going around trimming everything and mowing the lawn. You can see the ratings are reasonably high. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the certifications. So yeah, got to number 8 in the UK albums. I've decided with these episodes I'm not going to take a look at the UK charts. I actually find the website now a little bit annoying, and there's a lot of ads and it's very clunky, so I'm just going to use the chart summary I think at the bottom of the article, because that gives me what I need to know. So yeah, the album got to the highest position was number 8 in the UK albums charts. Don't see anything in terms of the US. It actually went platinum in the UK. Now, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the band, not bland by any sense of the word, there's a really good documentary. I think I've put people onto this channel before, Trash Theory, loads of really good stuff. They do a series called New British Canon. So if you're really interested in British music, you should check those out. They're really good. And there's one on Skunk Anansie. And at the start of it, it makes the point that they don't really fit neatly into the predominant genre of the time. So in the UK, and then being a UK band, obviously there was both Britpop and Brit rock, and I don't think, and in the documentary it makes the point, they don't really fit nicely into that. To me, they're very much like a 90s hard rock band. And what was interesting about hard rock bands from the 90s is just how diverse they were. And of course, to be honest with you, a lot of the new hard rock bands of the 90s were just simply, if they didn't fit in the UK at least, into the pile of something to do with Brit rock or Brit pop, they were put in the sort of alternative rock category. I mean, when you analyse it, as we'll see, we're slap bang in the middle of the 90s because this came out in 95. There's loads of interesting genres of music going on. So, bought this when it came out, bought this when it came out. I also got, my younger brother got into them as a result of me listening to them all the time. And I can't remember whether I bought this or he had it. But I'm pretty sure I have listened to this in passing. But yeah, these two I definitely owned on cassette. I'm trying to remember if I ever rebought this on... Well, I probably didn't rebuy it on CD, actually. Just to have it. But like I say, yeah, bought it in 95. Played it a lot at the time. I was going to have a quick look at the band members. I don't always do this very often. It depends on the complexity of the band members. And it's interesting because, yeah, super stable lineup, really. They had that one changeover. So on this album, Robbie France is the drummer. And then Mark Richardson took over, I think, again by the time the album came out. But yeah, that lineup then stuck around till 2001 when they disbanded, and then they reformed in 2009, and then their career apparently is carrying on. I've not listened to them recently. The only, I suppose, connection I have with the band musically is in the 2000s when I went to see Whitesnake. Gary Moore was support, and he was, for that tour that he was on, his band, it was a three-piece. So just him, bass player, drummer. The bass player was Cass from Skunk Anansie. Yeah, because I remember seeing them, and I knew that Cass was in Scars, but I don't remember it. You know, on the tour, it wasn't advertised as being Scars, and Scars was this power trio that Gary Moore put together sometime, I think, in the 2000s, and so I was pretty pleased when I got there and found that his band, if you like, Cass was playing. So that was really cool. So let's have a look at the situation with the British charts at this point in time, because this is really where I like to go with this. So part of the joy of rediscovering the album is, one, obviously listening through to it, but two, trying to place it on a musical stroke popular culture timeline, and me just getting a chance to burble on for an hour or so and reminisce about that particular year, and hopefully people are interested in those sort of reminisces. I know I like listening to podcasts where people do these sort of things. So yeah, that's really where this comes from. So if we scroll down the singles, so he's 17, you'll notice a lot of boy band action here. We've got Take That, but alongside all this other stuff, and this is obviously number one singles, but it gives us an idea of what was sort of peaking out at that point, what was really at the top of the pile. So you've got Oasis. The other thing to note is Robson and Jerome feature here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, they rose to prominence via the TV series Soldier, and they started doing covers of standards, basically. It's like Unchained Melody, White Cliffs of Dover, and were all over the charts in this period. Annoyingly, I don't particularly like them, but yeah. Out There Brothers, More Take That. Yeah, Blur with Country House. This was this big, what would you call it, like confrontation or rivalry going on between Blur and Oasis. And I think, from what I remember, yeah, there's probably something about this as part of this somewhere, I suspect. Somewhere in here. I'm sure I've seen a YouTube video about that whole period, and the rivalry between Oasis and what are they called now? Damn me, I'm terrible. And Blur. Shaggy. Oh, that's funny. I saw Shaggy about 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks or more. So playing at the Halifax Jazz Festival, which you try and go to every year. See a couple of artists there. Shaggy was excellent. If you like, what do they call it? Dancehall reggae type stuff with lots of toasting and other things. He's great for that. Yeah, I'm partial to a bit of reggae, probably more dub, but yeah, it was really good actually. He was on form. Simply Red. Oh yeah, this was huge at the time. Gangster's Paradise. Coolio, more Robson and Jerome. Up on the Roof. Michael Jackson. If you look at the number one albums from that year, then a bit more, Britpop does bubble up. Elastica album, it's a great album. I probably could have done that one actually. Although I don't think I bought that when it came out. I think I was about a year behind the curve on that. And Stanley Road by Paul Weller. What do they call him? The Mod Father. And definitely, you can see that Paul Weller was a big influence on a lot of people involved with Brit rock, Brit pop. Was that a compilation album? Yeah, I don't know if I've got that one. I can't remember if that's the one my wife bought me more recently. Yeah, Alison Moy is definitely worth checking out. Excellent singer. And was in Yazoo. Yazoo? Yeah, Yazoo. Pogs by Pink Floyd. That's the live album. Because I remember that in the CD case with the LEDs at the time. Oh yeah, These Days by Bon Jovi. Yeah, I'd pretty much lost interest in Bon Jovi by then. I Should Coco by Supergrass. Black Grape. So they're from what, Happy Mondays. So this would all be like post Manchester as well. Charlatans. Tim Burgess. Yeah, great. Is it the Charlatans guy that's doing all those album listening things? Yeah, I may have got him muddled up with someone else, but I think it's... Let me just check. Yeah, recognise him now. So yeah, he really took it to the next level during... I wonder if it says here. Yeah, this if you ever want to check, this is really interesting. So there's been a couple of books now. This Tim's Listening Party. So he started these Twitter listening parties, and yeah, they've done 700 now. So that was really cool. That really helped out a lot of bands during COVID, actually. Zeitgeist by the Levelers. We're into their earlier stuff, actually. Great Escape by Blur, Daydream Mariah Carey. What's the Story? Morning Glory, Life Simply. Different Class by Pulp. Made in Heaven album by Queen came out that year. And Robson and Jerome. Don't really want to look at the compilations, do we? So I thought it'd be good. I didn't do this last episode, and again, it's a site I don't always like using because just of all the ads. But I wanted to get an idea of, an aggregate site, and I like to use best ever albums, just like what they consider through all the multiple rankings of different reviews and stuff like that, to be like the top albums from that year. So the Bends, Oasis, Melancholy and Infinite Sadness by Smashing Pumpkins, Different Cast by Pulp, Post by Bjork, Liquid Swords, Jagged Little Pill, Alanis Morissette, PJ Harvey had an album out, Mobb Deep, Elliott Smith, top 10. Looking at Skunk Anansie, in terms of popularity of albums on the site, Paranoid and Sunburst, Paranoid and Sunburnt, bit of Magic the Gathering there, Sunburst. Paranoid and Sunburnt comes in number 3. And I can sort of see that. I'm trying to decide whether I do prefer this album to this. It's a close call. I do really enjoy this debut album. So, let's have a look now, 95 as a whole, and all the releases. So now we get onto the long bit. So, September, I'm just looking to see what's either side here. So this is the debut album by Down. Came out the same month. Oh, Timeless by Goldie. The Great Escape by Blur. Okay. This looks cool. Lenny Kravitz, where was he up to? Circus. Is that the... Jawbreaker. 4th album. Okay. I've got one of their albums, I can't remember which one. So let's just go through the year, and I'll try and, get some memories here back on stuff. So, scrolling through this, I didn't get into Fu Manchu until, 97? So this was an earlier album. They're like a stoner rock, desert rock band. Well worth checking out if you like stoner rock and you haven't checked them out. I never listened to this at the time, but I listened to it, several months ago when I was looking through 95, because if you've been following my Brian Eno series, you'll realise that his diary is based in 95. So quite a few of the albums, probably about half the, where are we now? Over half of the albums from this year I've added to a playlist for that series. And Sentence were a band I'd never really checked out at all. I was aware of them, and I checked out this album and I was pleasantly surprised, I must admit. It's really interesting because in 95 there's an awful lot of like melodic death metal being released, but with various twists on it. I mean, we're in the middle of the 90s, and the 90s was like a really fervent period for extreme music, and there's a lot of like 90s metal from all sorts of different subgenres and hybrids that was being released around about the middle of that 95. So no doubt we'll come across those. I did see, was it a member of the Roots again at the Halifax Jazz Festival. Second Coming by the Stone Roses. Didn't buy that till about a year later. So one of the things I was going to mention is 95, I just started, I think, my joint postgrad, which I was doing alongside working. So I was doing it evenings, and days off, weekends, through the Open University. And it took about 2.5 years. But I was investing all my disposable income, what little there was, into the course. It was very reasonable for a post-grad level course, but even so, it meant that I couldn't really spend an awful lot of money on music. So as we go through, you'll notice I mention a lot of albums that I listened to or purchased after the fact, infilled. And I'll point out, bands that I got into later. So, for instance, Swans, Great Annihilator. It wasn't until, I don't know, their album from, 96? Something, Soundtracks for the Blind, I think it's called, which is a double album. Leftism. Yeah, I only ever listened to this on Spotify years after it was released, but they had a lot of a few tracks that made the charts. They're, what do they call it? They're a progressive house band. Well worth checking out. Got a nice chill out sound to it. And they lost out to Portishead's Dummy in the Mercury Prize. So, I suppose if you're going to lose out to any band in that sort of area, then probably, it's no shame to lose out to Portishead. Apollo 414. I didn't really get into them until, was it Electric Light in Blue? Which I think was a couple of years later. Yeah, here again, like Dark Tranquillity, Swedish melodic death metal, pretty early on in their career. Was it 3 albums in for Slowdive? Didn't really get into shoegaze properly until the 2000s, and then I suddenly had a real jag on it and bought all 3 Slowdive albums side by side. This is them at their sort of most ambient, and this is an album I just enjoy falling to sleep to. But at the time, didn't really clue into them at all. Carter, what were they onto by then? 5th studio album. Oh, Cataclysm. I mentioned them in a Magic the Gathering video from last week. Yeah, so their debut album. Canadian death metal band. More death metal. Although what do they have? What's their genre called? They have their own thing, yeah. Northern Hyperblast, which I think describes it really well. I got into them quite late. Like I said, I think I said in the Magic the Gathering video, I think I saw them on a weekend festival in Halifax, but I'm not 100% sure because I get muddled up as to whether I saw Cataclysm or Cryptopsy or both of them. I know I saw Morbid Angel. I know they played. Yeah, I'll have to go back through some gig notes and see whether I did. But I didn't really listen to them properly until, 2018? So somewhere around here, I think. When was Meditations? Yeah, that album. And Ollie... was it Bodine? Sorry to mangle your name. Excellent drummer. Slash's Snake Pit. I did see Slash sometime in the 2010s, where he uses, what's his name? I'm trying to remember now, and it's gone. I'm trying to think, the band that did the album Fortress. Something Bridge. who was in his band at this point. Yeah, not who I'm thinking of. Bridge is the name of the band I'm trying to think of, and I just can't remember the name of the lead vocalist and guitarist in there. But I know he's in Slash's, what are they called, like Slash and the Conspirators or something? Let's have a look. Hey, I can just click around, can't I? That's what it, oh, there we go. Miles Kennedy, that's it. Yeah, I saw them on tour sometime in the 2010s. They're really good. Yep, first Nevermore album. More metal. What are we on? No Protection. Yeah, that's that remix album. So Massive Attack were probably the first trip hop band that I got into, although even then I was a little bit late to the party. I think I bought Blue Lines a year after it came out, and that's what got me into trip hop. And as we'll see in a moment, yeah, there we go, Tricky, that was good timing. So I was listening to this again as a result of getting in 1995. Awesome album, pretty dark though, but yeah, Tricky was originally involved with Massive Attack, and what do they refer to themselves as? The oh, okay, Alison Goldfrapp was on the album as well. Yeah, a lot of, I mean, this is great, this album, just the different things in here. I love the album. Wild Bunch, that's what I was trying to think of. And there's plenty of stuff on YouTube about trip hop, about Portishead, about the Wild Bunch, Massive Attack, yeah. Oh, this album, yeah, I'd still do actually. I find, so Atari Teenage Riot, what do they play? It's referred to as digital hardcore. They are just really brutal considering the sort of stuff I like, but I remember listening to it at the time. So yeah, a friend of mine from work, it was cool because my boss was big into music, and another friend that I met through work was also on the same helpline as me, was also big into music, and ultimately I used to, at one point, after we left the firm we were working at, and I went and worked for myself, and one of my friends went and worked as a tech support at a local college. We used to meet up once a week and do what we called serious music, which was supposed to be composing music, but we ended up just listening to it. And I remember him playing me some Atari Teenage Riot, thinking, wow, this is really heavy. And I can't remember at that point if I'm trying to remember the time when I started getting into industrial, and I think it was just after this actually. But I remember hearing some of the tracks from this, him playing me some stuff. It's a PJ Harvey album. But yeah, everything so far that I've flagged up, either I've only listened to on Spotify or I did buy retrospectively. Nothing so far I actually bought when it came out, because my money was going elsewhere, on my education, on petrol in my car, and paying housekeeping, rent. So, where are we? Anything here? I mean, you've got bands like Quicksand, but again, I wasn't aware of those until a lot later. Same with Jewel. Cardigans again. Yeah, not until later, around the time of Gran Turismo. I got into them big then. This is an interesting band. So this is side project of Dave Lombardo. Grip Inc. Didn't become aware of them until the late 90s, when I was putting together, I think, a website about Slayer, just like a little one on GeoCities or something like that. And I was doing a bit of research on other albums, and I discovered this. Oh, The Bends by Radiohead. Yeah, bought the first album when it came out, but yeah, didn't really keep up with them. Elastica, I think I was about a year behind the curve on this album, although I was aware of all the singles on it. Same with Everything Is Wrong. Took me about 2 or 3 years to pick up on that. Yeah, same with Smart Sleeper. And all of this stuff was getting played in the charts. The Orb I was already into. I bought one of their albums around the same time I got into trip hop through Massive Attack, but didn't really keep up. Went to see Steve Vai recently. Awesome live. Actually probably only a couple of weeks ago. So after Tricky. Yeah. The only Steve Vai stuff I ever bought was Passion and Warfare, and was it Flexible? Like the really early stuff. Ned's Atomic Dustbin. I was into them around the time of Kill Your Television, but yeah, didn't really keep it up. Monster Magnet, Dopes to Infinity. So this has Negasonic Teenage Warhead on it, which is there's a link there to Deadpool. But didn't get into Monster Magnet until quite a bit later, like post 97, maybe even the 2000s. Symbolic Death. I can never remember if I bought this album or not. I don't think I did. Didn't my brother had that, my middle brother. He was still keeping up on Faith No More. I think I stopped buying their stuff about the album. Yeah, the album before this. Their fourth album. So I had, the first 4 albums I had. I didn't really keep a tab on Skid Row. I'm not sure if I had that. Strapping Young Lad, not really into them until about the time of City. KMFDM was a band I got into through listening to an industrial compilation, but didn't really buy anything by them. And that wasn't until a couple of year or so later. Had a friend that was big into White Zombie. Again, didn't really pick up on them until probably the 2000s, when I was sort of infilling a lot of 90s music that I'd missed out on. There was a bit of a gap in my, what would you call it, my extreme music catalogue from basically in the early 90s. Between, I suppose, death metal and 97, around about that time, 96, 97. So, I missed out a lot on Gaius and a lot of the stoner rock stuff and melodic death metal and Norwegian black metal and all those sort of things, and then picked up on them a lot later. I wasn't buying any UFO by this point. There's some Trouble. And Moonspell, again, nothing yet that I bought when it came out. Is that the first Behemoth album? It is, yeah. Octagon Battery, so that was post the whole Viking metal period, I suppose. Retro thrash. So which Slaughter is this? Is that the American one? Yeah. Mersbo. Never really got into this band, and didn't buy anything by Clutch until 2010, when I was working on I put together a little vinyl collection, which I'll have to go through at some point. It's what I call my new vinyl collection, where I've got an album from each year, from since, well, actually before I was born. It starts well before I was born, actually. And I bought a Clutch album for one of the years. Basically, I bought vinyl that I didn't own, and tried to buy albums that I didn't own, but some I did. Ended up double buying, I suppose. The other one I already had on CD. Domination. I was trying to remember, and I didn't want to go rifling through my CD collection because it's all neatly in aluminium boxes. But I can't remember if I owned this album or not. I know I owned the album before it. And if I did buy this, I don't think I was buying CDs at this point, so it would be on CD. That's the first Sigur album. You see, again, lots of really extreme music that I just completely missed out on. Now, Orchid, again, retrospectively bought this. It took me until hang on, let's have a look. Yeah, so this is their debut album. So I was four albums in, 99, till I got into that band. Another retrospective band. Didn't get into My Dying Bride until around the time of, like, Gods of the Sun. And then there's three bands actually that are part of, they call them the Peaceville Three. So they're all doom death bands, or started out doom death bands. My Dying Bride, Anathema, and Paradise Lost. And all three of those bands I finally picked up on around the same time, sort of around the late 90s, and literally just bought their back catalogue. Because around that time I'd just come off the back of having a pretty good job in programming, so had a little bit of extra disposable income to dispose of. I had friends that were into Primus, never really got into them. Teenage Fan Club, was aware of them. I think I listened to this album about 2 or 3 months ago. I'm having trouble remembering what was on it though, so I can't be that memorable. I mentioned Gary Moore before. At this point he was definitely still on his blues jag. Oh, Further Down the Spiral, I have that. I did buy that when it came out. Pounds of Vote, how many albums were they in? My 5th album by then. Yeah, none of that stuff was really until later for me. Infilling. So this would have been after, Grave Dancers Union. I had Runaway Train, is it? On CD single. At the time, I was so desperate, like 94-ish, 93, 94, that I still desperately wanted to buy music but had hardly any money at all, and so I was buying CD singles in 94. So yeah, look, there's Draconian Times by Paradise Lost, funny. So 1 Second was my step on album for them, and then again I backfilled Fugazi not until, again, got into them retrospectively, probably through some sort of retrospective article in, I don't know, I was still picking up the odd copy of not Metal Hammer, I'm trying to think of the other one, Kerrang! So it probably was on there. This one I really do remember vividly, but for a different reason. So I didn't buy this when it came out, but in 96, another friend at work was actually my boss on the helpline, said, have you checked out any of this sort of like new, I can't even remember what he called it, but like new American metal maybe or something like that, because he knew I was into extreme music. I said, no, I've haven't really been buying much music. He said, oh, give me a tape and I'll record Demanufactured by Fear Factory. I think you'll really like it. And he was actually the lead singer in a sort of groove metal stroke thrash band at the time, like a local band. And yeah, it was really good. I years later I bought this and then remanufacture and obsolete. Didn't buy this till a couple of years later, but yeah, this was all over the charts. There's a Stanley Road album by Paul Weller. Oh, Subterranean, first EP, another melodic death metal band. Deep Forest. What's that there? So this was the US release of this. What was this? This is their second album. So I really didn't start to appreciate them until around the time of The Drugs Don't Work and was it Unfinished Sympathy, I think it's called. Probably mangling some of these album titles. Exit Planet Dust. I got 2 albums by the Chemical Brothers on CD, but didn't pick up on them until the following year. So again, you can see a pattern here. A lot of stuff here, took a while before I was in a position to start buying CDs or music fairly regularly. First Foo Fighters album, yeah, I didn't listen to that until the 2000s. There's Caius, fourth and final album. Again, wasn't even aware of them until the 2000s, which is funny. Because most of the stoner rock I got into was post the bands that started it all, I suppose. Like all the ex-band members of Caius, really. That's a good album. So yeah, my inroads to AFI was through, is it Black Sails on the Sunset, something like that? Let me check. Yeah, 99, so probably 2000. Because I was made aware of this through Terrorizer End of Year, and so that would have, the 99 one would have come out start of 2000. And so I thought, yeah, I should check them out. And then bought, that when it came out. So yeah, definitely not really on the curve with album releases in terms of buying them. I'll probably find a couple that I did buy when they came out. This is a US release of Garbage. Yeah, a lot of the Britpop era stuff I didn't own on CD until the 2000s, definitely. Gathering, an interesting band. Got into them a bit later than this album. I'm trying to remember which album that would have been now. Yeah, How to Measure a Planet. So around 99. Again, another one where I picked up on it through Terrorizer magazine. Great Escape. Funnily enough, I listened to this for the first time the other day. I listened to so I bought their, what was it? Yeah, Part Life. I did buy that around about the time it came out. I think, yeah, must have been able to afford it in '94. But that was the only one album by them I bought. Everything else I've listened to on Spotify. Jawbreaker. Timeless by Goldie. Yeah, another one that took me a few years to check out. A great album, actually. More drum and bass really than trip hop. Nola by Down. There it is, Paranoid and Sunburnt. So I did buy that when it came out. And that's, yeah, so not many albums. Yeah, this year. Yeah, another one several years later before I got into Cathedral. I'm trying to even think what album it might be. Let's have a look. Yeah, I don't know. That's got Hopkins Witchfinder General on it. So which is the one with Static Magic? Yeah, the Ethereal Mirror. I retrospectively got into them. Probably as a result of some Doom list on in a Terrorizer magazine special, I suspect. There's a pattern here. First Rammstein album. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of them until Mutter. What's that? Up All Night, E17, yeah, they were huge. This I probably did buy when it came out. This I didn't buy till years later. I was doing a bit of Deftones infilling, another band that I just completely skipped over. Yeah, the whole, what was it called? Like new metal thing, yeah, just completely missed it. And got into a few bands after the fact. This is a pretty cool band, Melancholy, actually. There's Osmosis by Ozzy Osbourne. Stomp 442. Yeah, I pretty much stopped buying Anthrax by then. The last album I probably bought by them would be Sound of White Noise. Yeah, with all of these, either I had copies or my middle brother had copies. Yeah. There's Different Class by Pulp. Yeah, it was years before I bought that album. Bought His and Hers when it came out. Yeah, I noticed this was on here. This was really interesting, and something I want to make a comment about this, and I don't know if anybody noticed the same thing. So there were certain groups of bands that were popular in the UK with, like, you know, people who were big into metal, and previous to, so often I'd be buying stuff in record stores and I'd see, you know, like a metal dude with albums under their arm, and you know, I'd often see them flicking through the Cypress Hill. So I think people definitely were interested, that were into heavy music, or into the sort of darker hip hop. And prior to that, the other thing I noticed, and a relative of mine I remember was big into like Anthrax and a lot of the thrash stuff, and not surprisingly ended up getting into like NWA and Public Enemy. That was another big crossover. So yeah, there's certain bands I've noticed in other genres outside of metal where people just seem to gravitate towards them. That's that Made in Heaven album. I think I probably said on a previous episode that will be the last Queen album I bought. Hang on. Whoops. We've gone down the George Michael rabbit hole. What happened there? That's very strange. Oh, there we go. What did I buy? Didn't buy that. Didn't buy that. Not that. Well, yeah, Innuendo, I suspect. I think there was a compilation release, like something like Queen Rocks, but I can't remember when that was released. But I know I had a cassette of that. No, I wasn't really buying much Alice in Chains at that point. It's Demanufacture. Digipack with bonus tracks. Yeah, so this, the big track off of this, yeah, it was just constantly played on the radio. That's when the Brian Eno Passengers album that he was working on with U2 was finally released. So no doubt I'll get up to that when I talk about it as part of my Brian Eno series. Sunny Day Real Estate. I have one of their albums. I'm having trouble remembering which one. Oh, of course, Slaughter of the Soul. Yeah, another melodic death metal band. That was the year for a lot of that stuff build up. From like, you know, the early to mid 90s and beyond, but yeah, I didn't own that until quite well after the band had disbanded. Yeah, didn't pick up on that. Storm of Night's Bane by Dissection. The Gallery by Dark Tranquillity. Yeah, another Swedish melodic death metal band. Second one. I'm trying to remember what album by theirs I have. Is it Omnio? Or The Mind's Eye? Yeah, The Mind's Eye. Maybe I'm getting the Omnio. Oh, Omnio, am I thinking of In the Woods? I don't know. In the Woods, At the Gates, Dark Tranquillity. It all gets very confusing sometimes. Yeah, anyway. The Mind's Eye, that was it. Wow. So many memories here of albums purchased after the fact. Another Sabotage album. Greed Killing EP by Napalm Death. What were they up to by then? Oh, Fear, Emptiness, Despair. Yeah. And then all the stuff with release date unknown. So the upshot of that is, yeah, I bought very little that year when it came out. And that was primarily to like lack of disposable income. It was being redirected to my studies, my education. Just seeing if there's anything I forgot. Oh, Outside I did buy when it came out, because I remember I remember seeing a performance of not this, but an earlier Hello Space Boy on what was it? Later with Jules Holland, maybe. So yeah, pretty sure I got that when it came out, but could be wrong. Yeah, so not many. All of it was retrospective. Yeah, I do know that like around 97, 98, I spent a lot of time catching up with music that I wasn't able to purchase. And that just carried on probably into the 2000s actually. Easily. And when I go down this list, there's still a ton more that I really want to listen to. Like some of this sort of Pennywise stuff and like Fugazi back catalogue. There's stuff by Jarbo, who's involved with Swans, and Michael Gyra. Catherine Wheel, didn't get into them until later. And there's bands like Gamma Ray, like power metal bands. The fourth album. So there's Kai Hansen, ex-member of Halloween. What's that one? I got I'll Be There For You, yeah, Friends. Yeah. I was going to have a quick look at films, actually. I hadn't planned on doing this originally, but I thought I'd have a quick look. So yeah, these were the highest grossing films. Die Hard with a Vengeance, Toy Story, Apollo 13, GoldenEye, Pocahontas, Batman Forever, Seven, Casper, Waterworld, Jumanji. Don't remember going to the cinema to see any of these, but I think I've seen definitely that, possibly that, definitely Seven. Later, I don't even know if I've seen the original Toy Story. I think I might have caught bits of it on the TV. But yeah. Didn't really start going to the cinema a lot again until the late 90s. When I sort of clocked on to the fact that on a Sunday morning, early, the cinema was like super cheap. And so I used to go and watch films on a Sunday morning. Either with friends or by myself. But yeah, it was a great way to get into the movies cheap in the UK at the time. So there we have it. I hope you've enjoyed that trip down memory lane. Definitely, if you've got streaming, check out Skunk Anansie. I would say, definitely check out this channel if you're unaware of it. Really good, music documentaries. And, that then I find leads into other things like completely unrelated to this, but like a parallel listening thing I'm doing with my wife at the moment, which is going through the 1001 albums before you die. And we're just jumping around in the book a bit, and we've gone back to 76. So, we twice a week we just have a bit of a chat about like a particular album and what we remember about listening to it, and we re-listen to it. And as a result of looking at some stuff, I ended up going down a bit of a T-Rex, Mark Bolan rabbit hole. So I'm looking forward, possibly today or tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. There's a really good BBC documentary which someone's uploaded to YouTube about Mark Bolan. So that'll be interesting. And he, often gets forgotten about. He existed in parallel with David Bowie. Sort of came out of the folk psychedelia scene and ended up, a pretty big player in glam rock, and sadly died too young. But if you listen to his albums like back to back to back, really interesting listening to his like musical development over time. So yeah, there's loads of I mean, the best thing about YouTube is, you know, all these creators putting out these really high quality music documentaries. I can't even fathom how much effort they must put in to create these, in terms of the editing and everything. These, you know, a lot of these you watch and they're worthy of or comparable with the sort of things that you know, the major channels might put out on TV. So yeah, check them out. So thanks once again for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this as much as I did making this. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.